Welcome back to the OrganizedPreneur podcast, The Launchpad. This is where systems and strategy meet simplicity, and I'm your host, Aldreama Harper. And today, I want to talk to you heart to heart about something I believe a lot of us are going through. Maybe we don't want to admit it, but we're going through. And I must admit that I have gone through this a few times. And so what do you do when the business you've built no longer fits? What do you do when the business you have built no longer fits? And maybe that means it no longer fits the direction that you're going, or maybe God is calling you to pivot in a new direction because he has a new assignment. There are a lot of things that could be happening when you find yourself in a place where your business strategy, or perhaps your business that you've built, no longer fits. So I had a coaching conversation with one of my clients recently that just really kind of stayed with me. Brilliant woman of God who is skilled in writing and editing and supporting others in academia and business. And she'd already launched her podcast. And so she and I have gone through that, and she's actually quite happy with where she is with her podcast. And so we were having this conversation. And so she said that she felt like something was not clicking, like she was not getting the clients that she thought she would get with her podcast. And she was concerned about clients or potential clients were turning to AI for writing and editing, and, other options were pretty much driving the prices down. And so she began to question whether what she offered was, still needed. Right. And so that hit her hard. And so she just was a little bit concerned about, whether or not clients would choose her option over other options that might be more economically feasible. Well, we know that that happens, but she was also just kind of concerned about whether or not this was still her purpose. So as a result of those questions, she began questioning, whether or not she was still in alignment with God's purpose for her life and her business and ministry. And so here's the thing. AI didn't steal her value. It actually is forcing a pivot. And this is what I shared with her. Like, AI, it's a tool. It's not a threat. And what we have to do is find a way to leverage the tools. Things are going to continue to advance. There's going to be improvements and technologies and platforms and things that's going to continue to progress and advance in this world. And so we cannot afford to stand still and pretend that things haven't changed. What we have to do is move with wisdom, with God's wisdom. God is still sovereign. And so even with all of the things that seem to be moving and pushing us in a highly technological or technologically advanced situation, we have to move with wisdom. There's no need for us to be afraid. And so as we continue to talk, she was describing her work, she wasn't really just talking about correcting grammar or fixing typos. Her value is more than that. When I listen to her podcast and when I listen to her talking, and I'm listening to the things that she wants to help people out of, she's talking about walking people through stress and imposter syndrome and fear of rejection, and helping them to feel more confident about their message. And what that is coaching. But as I listen to her podcast and I know about her intentions of how she wants to help people, her program it began to look more like coaching rather than fixing grammar and editing and things like that. And so I told her, I said, you're already doing the deeper work. Let's look at how to position yourself for it. And so we dived in quite a few tactics and things like that. And we even looked at examples in the scripture. So far as Solomon, who was the wealthiest man that ever lived, he didn't fix problems. He helped people to think through them. And so that's what makes coaching so powerful. It addresses the why behind the struggle, not just the surface. And so as we continue to, dive into how to make that pivot, I shared, of course, that with her about Solomon. And we talked about her podcast because I said, your podcast has potential, right? One of the things that I did notice that she had only a few episodes. And so like a lot of other new podcasters, she was a little bit distracted, or not distracted, excuse me. She was a little bit discouraged by the lack of traction. And so we went and looked at her analytics and looked at her. She only had 5 episodes. And the thing is, you can't make a determination based on 5 episodes. There has to be more consistency and more episodes, actually. And there were reasons behind the inconsistency. We talked about the value that she brings. We looked at her podcast, and then we looked at her website and discovered that her offers on her website were not aligned with her podcast and the direction she's going in her podcast. So it created an incongruency. And it was like having different messages competing with each other. So we had to bring it all into focus. And I said, so let's make sure that we redefine who are you really talking to? What are they struggling with? And how can your podcast lead them to that solution? And so she realized, she's like, you're right. So we're going to have to actually add another layer to it, because what she's helping them to do is really reclaim confidence and clarity and credibility. And that is very powerful when you think about it, because that's a message that's worth showing up for. But the thing is, you have to get really intentional about the people that you are called to serve. So we mapped out a few things. We shared with her some things that she needed to do. So as we continued to talk in our session, I said, okay, so even though the podcast is good, you can't be talking to everyone. And if you're sending them to your website and it's not clear or congruent, then we have to create an alignment there. I also suggested that we work on creating some type of digital product, whether that's going to be some kind of checklist or what have you. So she's very thorough and very detailed. And so that is when we had to talk about, how can you realistically show up for your podcast? Let's reevaluate a realistic schedule for your podcast. And then consider coaching as your core offer, along with your editing and other things that you do for your clients. She loved it. And so when I think about that, it really wasn't about abandoning what she was good at. It was about building a business that reflected her gifts and her faith and her calling. These are things, as I said early on, I've had to do myself. I've had to make pivots myself, because as we grow and progress and begin to understand who we are and the value that we bring to the marketplace, sometimes it's going to require a pivot. And we have to be there to serve in excellence and expediency. I don't know if that's a word, but expeditiously is the word that I wanted. And so we have to be there And so it is not that AI is taking the job away. We're just going to learn, and this is for you and I and anyone else that's listening here. You've got to learn to leverage those tools because it's not going to stop. It's not going to slow down, and it's not going to even wait for you. It is progressing at a rapid speed. So we got to learn to use the tools. And so I really get that sometimes you've got to stop and pause and pray and wait for direction so that you can get clarity and be on the right path. I get that. I want to be on the right path, but also you want to make sure that we're not waiting for God to do something that we can actually do. And this walk of faith is more than just asking God, okay, just tell me what's next. Tell me what's next. I had a conversation with one of my other clients. I believe it was just yesterday, but I said, yes, we want, to be in a place where we're hearing from God, but sometimes God, and in most cases, I would say God is just, He's waiting for us to make the first step. Because here's the thing, He's not going to do what we should do, and we can't do what He can do. And so that step of faith that you have to take sometimes will require just taking the leap and just doing it. And even if you think it's wrong, God, in His sovereignty, knows how to course correct. There are things that we have to learn along the way. And most of all, we have to learn how to lean on Him, because clarity really does come through action. Taking action, you get clarity, you get confidence, you get momentum. And so sometimes it's just about taking that step, taking that leap. And so He's definitely not going to, show you the whole staircase, the whole plan, because He wants you to lean on Him for understanding. He wants you to lean on Him for wisdom, knowledge, and opportunity. And so that's the lesson here, one of the lessons. And so we're continuing to work on a plan for my client. But I just wanted to share this in this episode because I felt like there are others out there that may be in this same place of like, something's just not hitting, something's just not, there's something missing, and I'm not sure if I'm in, I'm on the right path. And if this resonated with you, you are not alone. Whether you're feeling overwhelmed with AI or just unsure of your next move, whatever that is, unsure of if you're on the right path. And so if you're stuck trying to just kind of piece your messaging together, there is a path forward. Now, if you need help finding that, I'd love to support you in that effort. If any of this resonated with you and you want to jump on a call, there will be a link here in the show notes where you can book a strategy call. And I'm happy to get on the call with you to see if I can help you. If there's an opportunity for us to work together, we'll do that. If not, you can leave with a strategy. So that information will be in the show notes, along with other resources where books and perhaps some training and master classes that might help you along the way. And so, if this episode blessed you in any way, would you subscribe and share it with a fellow entrepreneur? Or even leave a review if you feel led to. That means a whole lot more than you can imagine. So I thank you for listening and hanging out with me on this episode of the OrganizedPreneur, the Launchpad. Until next time, stay organized, stay inspired, and I'll see you in your earbuds. Have an amazing day.